I have a sad story to tell you, but don't worry, it has a happy ending. In the 1970s, there was a 42-year-old housewife who was having a midlife crisis. More than one, I'll bet. To protect her identity, we will call her Mary. Upon reaching her 40th birthday, Mary found herself alone most of the time. Her children had grown and moved out of the house, and her husband was a busy professional. At night, she had difficulty sleeping, and during the day, she had a harder and harder time managing the house. Frequently, she spent most of the day crying. She complained of feeling overwhelmingly useless. Finally, she began to contemplate suicide. Luckily, Mary knew she needed help. Her family admitted her to a local hospital for extra care. The first 3 weeks of treatment went well. A combination of group therapy and medication seemed successful. During one of Mary's film sessions with her psychiatrist, Mary insisted she was feeling significantly better. Given her improved mood, Mary asked perhaps could she get a weekend pass to visit her family. After consulting with the staff, the doctor agreed with the team. Mary was better. Fortunately, right before checking out, Mary came clean. She went to her doctor and admitted that she had been lying in her interview and faking it in group therapy sessions. She was still desperately depressed. The coming weekend, she'd planned to do something drastic away from the hospital. But her confession marked a true turning point in her recovery. And after many months of treatment, overcoming a few relapses, Mary went on to lead a normal life with her family. Despite this happy ending, the Mary incident left the hospital's medical team rattled. How had she deceived so many people in the facility? The hospital staff reviewed a video recording of the doctor's interview with Mary. What had they missed? In fact, medical deception is a worrying dilemma. Patients frequently lie to their doctors, and psychologists dread being fooled by patients who hide their real health needs. After multiple experienced psychologists reviewed Mary's film without answers, the team decided to get more help. They enlisted Dr. Paul Ekman, a young psychologist who had been conducting experiments on human lie detection with patients. Dr. Ekman and his team spent hundreds of hours reviewing Mary's footage. It wasn't until he put the video in slow motion that clues began to emerge. When the doctor asked Mary about her plans for the weekend, a frightening emotion leaked out. You just had to know where to look. We saw in slow motion a fleeting facial expression of despair, so quick that we had missed seeing it the first few times we examined the film, explained Dr. Ekman. This flicker of sorrow was the break that Ekman and his team needed. They began to re-examine the footage, looking for these micro gestures. After a few rounds, they started spotting them consistently, always right before a lie and often covered by a fake smile. Dr. Ekman came to call these flickering facial gestures micro expressions. Genius is only a superior power of seeing. John Ruskin. Face science. Doctors once thought babies learned to smile by mimicking the doting expressions of their mothers and fathers. This is a myth. Congenetically, blind babies make the same facial expressions as other babies, despite having never seen a face. Our instinct to make certain expression derives from nature, not nurture. Micro expressions are an innate, universal human behavior. Fascinated by this idea, Dr. Paul Ekman conducted a series of studies in a remote part of New Guinea. He brought with him photos of Americans expressing different emotions, showing everything from smiles to grimaces to frowns. The tribe he was visiting was especially disconnected from the Western world. They'd never seen a movie, much less TV. With a translator's help, Dr. Ekman asked the New Guineans to examine the Americans' facial expressions and guess what they thought each American was feeling in the picture. Dr. Ekman was shocked to find that their guesses were extremely accurate. Hey, can you guys give me just a second?
So Amy, the question is micro expressions. So all of the faces that Jenny makes are those micro expressions.
Good question. Disgust while she's on the phone.
When people say things that are their face says they have that expression, they're like, I can't help what my face says. Like,
right.
Is that the micro expression? Resting bitch face, is that a micro expression? Or is that just a personality flaw? Or maybe not a personality flaw, maybe a facial
personality
flaw.
Aspect.
Interesting.
It's interesting. might have to divide this chapter in two.
A long chapter. Oh, we're going to go into the 7 facial tells.
Well, let me just tell you, there was a lot of micro expressions this morning at this house.
I got woken up by Ella coming in and she's like, Mom, Dakota hasn't even moved yet. And I told her yesterday, we need to be at school at 6:45. She hasn't even left her room. And I'm like, okay, what time is it? And she's like, it's only like 3 after 6, but she's usually moving by now. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I'll take care of it. I was like, good morning. And she's
Right,
like,
yeah, exactly.
oh. I'm like, oh my gosh, all drama.
Yeah, there was a clash of the Titans before Kid left between Jay and her. So to which I got to hear him be like, oh, she never listens to me.
Maybe this will help us decode that so we can cut it off at the pass if we learn the
Right.
facial expressions.
Right.
I got nothing.
Just they're both so strong-willed and have their own opinions.
Yeah.
So
Who, husbands and kids? No.
Yeah.
No.
unfortunately, there's so much alike that's part of it.
Okay, I gotta find out where I was. Then we're gonna wait just another second because Rich is here and he's gonna make a smoothie and it's gonna make an ungodly amount of noise.
I made my smoothie this morning. It's made an ungodly amount of noise.
You have what?
I had my smoothie this morning. It made an ungodly amount of noise.
Oh, there you go. So see, it's just way too much fun.
Especially if you have frozen stuff in there. It's hella
Yeah,
loud.
that's what it's like.
Yeah.
Frozen strawberries. I saw a lot of frozen fruit hitting the thing, so it's gonna be a minute. Yeah, and I can't figure out where I was. So
You
there we
were-
are.
Okay,
I'm fascinated by this idea. That's where I am. I'm gonna read the rest of this paragraph because he's still dumping stuff in there. He's putting more stuff in there than I put in dinner when I make it. It's actually kind of fun to watch. All right. Pay attention. Fascinated by this idea, Dr. Paul Ekman conducted a series of studies. Oh, we did that. Okay.
Yep.
With the translator's help, Dr. Ekman asked the New Guineans to examine the Americans' facial expressions and guess what they thought each American was feeling in the picture. Dr. Ekman was shocked to find that their guesses were extremely accurate. They could even perform the experiment in reverse. As Ekman named an emotion, participants quickly mimed the corresponding facial expressions. After repeating this experiment with participants all around the world, Dr. Ekman was able to identify 7 universal microexpressions. Microexpression is a noun, a brief involuntary facial expression that humans make when they feel an intense emotion. Oh, you missed it. You weren't looking at me. I made one.
you made an intense emotion.
We make these expressions regardless of culture, sex, or race. This is why reading microexpressions is such a valuable people hack. Since everyone falls prey to the same 7 facial tells, we can study them, spot them, and decode them. How to decode faces. This is where Zoom is fun, right?
Right.
While my husband watches Monday Night Football on ESPN, I'm glued to ABC for my weekly Monday dose of The Bachelorette. It's trashy TV that I insist is for work, to observe human behavior. Really, I just want to win my Bachelorette fantasy league. In one particularly notable season, Bachelorette Emily Maynard meets Ari Lindeneck Jr., a dreamy race car driver from Arizona. There are 25 men competing to win. Okay, we're gonna wait. You guys have to wait to see what Emily does, because
Okay. We're holding.
Okay.
you guys are reading ahead.
I'm not reading ahead.
I'm reading the conversation in the box.
She's reading ahead. That's what she likes to do.
She's reading from the back to the front.
She likes to read books and study. It's always her strong suit. Not, oh my goodness. Jenny looks like she's trying to will that to be done with her eyes.
I'm watching this one piece of spinach that just does not want to cooperate. It's like, nope, not going down there.
That was a micro expression.
You probably wouldn't like my smoothies either, Jenny.
He got it. He did. He had one rogue piece of spinach that just didn't want to play. Okay. Oh, the dreamy race car driver from Arizona. Okay. There are 25 men competing to win Emily's heart and propose to her at the end of the season. Tall with a big smile and blue eyes, Ari has potential to go all the way. There's only one problem. Emily's former fiance was also a race car driver and tragically died on the way to a race. Could Ari's profession hit too close to home? Let me tell you, viewers like me were on the edge of our seats to find out. The night of the confession, Ari sits Emily down to tell her something. Emily smiles demurely, waiting for the potential bomb to drop. Here's a recap of just the verbal exchange. Ari, I'm a little nervous about one thing, I'm going to admit. Emily, tell me. Ari, so my background is in racing, so I don't know if you knew that about me, but I've been in race cars since I was 14 years old. Are you okay with that? Emily, yeah, I am. Totally. I love racing. I love being at the racetrack. I have so many good memories there, and it's part of who I am, and it's really the only sport I know about. Ari, that's so cool. Emily, I know. It's like the back of my hand. I can tell you about racing. I can tell you about cars. Ooh, sounds good, right? Nope, it sounded good, but it looked pretty bad. This 20-second moment spoke volumes. Emily's facial expressions told us a totally different story. Here's what happened behind the words. Ari, verbal. I'm a little nervous about one thing, I'm going to admit. Emily, nonverbal, nothing. Emily, tell me. Emily's nonverbal, happiness, micro-expression. Ari, so my background is in racing. I don't know if you knew that about me, but I've been in race cars since I was 14 years old. Are you okay with that? Emily's nonverbal, sadness, micro-expression, fear, micro-expression. Emily, I'm totally okay. I love being at the racetrack. I have so many good memories. Part of who I am. It's the only sport I know about. Nonverbal, shakes her head no, loss of volume. Contempt, micro-expression. Ari, that's so cool. Emily, hair touch. Emily, I know it like the back of my hand. I can tell you about racing and I can tell you about cars. Emily's nonverbal, contempt, micro-expression. During this interaction, Emily showed three crucial micro-expressions: sadness, fear, and contempt. These were key because they were incongruent with her words. Even though her words said she was fine, her true emotions were displayed on her face. Emily didn't choose Ari in the end. He made it to the final two before being cut. Anyone who could read micro-expressions would not have been surprised by Ari's fate. His profession was the deal breaker. All you had to do was look at her face to see it. Perhaps this could have saved Ari. If he had noticed her hidden emotions and addressed them, he could have reassured her. Instead, he missed all the nonverbal clues that was to come. I call this hack the decoder. Hack number 6, the decoder.
Part of me wants to be Izzy.
I know, right?
She has her own facial expression.
And verbal.
And verbal, yeah. Spot the 7 micro-expressions during interactions to uncover truth. Decoding is all about looking for the emotional intent behind the words. It's about listening by hearing and looking. First, here's how to use the decoder hack. Congruency. Look to see if someone's stated emotions match their visible emotions. If your client says he's happy to see you, he should have a happy micro expression. If your wife says she is fine, but has an angry micro expression, she probably isn't fine. If she says she's fine, she probably isn't fine. Just
No matter
saying.
what her face looks
Yeah.
like.
Connection. People make micro expressions while they're talking and while they're listening. Facial expressiveness is never off. While this can be a lot to take in, paying consistent attention to someone's face also helps you with hack number 2, the eye contact piece of the triple threat. If you thought your average eye contact was below 60%, then reading micro expressions is an easy way to incentivize more gazing. Speed. Micro expressions happen incredibly quickly, in less than a second. Anything longer than a second is simply a facial expression. Why is this important? Micro expressions, less than a second, cannot be controlled. So they're honest views into emotions. Facial expressions, longer than a second, can be faked and are less honest. Therefore, you should look at brief flashes of facial responsiveness for the most accurate reading. According to Dr. Paul Ekman, when you are speaking with someone, these are the 7 reactions you should look out for. Anger. We flash signs of anger when we feel displeasure at others or annoyance with a situation. The anger microexpression is marked by lowered eyebrows pinched together, 2 vertical creases between the eyebrows, tensing of the lower eyelids, tightening the lips either pressed firmly together or in a position to yell. You often see an anger microexpression in the following situations: during a confrontation, when delivering bad news, before an argument or fight. Photo alert. Accidentally in a profile photo when someone is squinting into the sun or does not like being in front of the camera.
Mm.
There you go. Okay. Spotting contempt. Scorn, disdain, or disrespect is quite a powerful and complex emotion and is marked by an extremely simple facial expression gesture. Contempt is often called smirking because it is a one-sided mouth raise. Here's what's interesting about contempt. It confuses us. We offer a micro expression quiz for you to take in our digital bonus at www.scienceofpeople.com/toolbox. Over 22,000 people have taken this quiz. Contempt is the one that gets the most wrong answers. Of all the emotions, contempt seems to stump 40% of people, followed closely by fear, which 35% of people get wrong. Contempt confuses us because we mistake the smirk for a partial smile or boredom. But that could not be further from the truth. Contempt is a cue of serious dislike and scorn. We often show contempt when we feel that someone or something is beneath our attention. The contempt microexpression is marked by a one-sided cheek lift, pulling up the right or left corner of the mouth. You often see a contempt microexpression in the following situations: if you tell someone no, when someone hears or encounters something they don't like, during a good disagreement or after being put down. Photo alert. Accidentally in a profile picture where someone thinks it means a partial smile. And happiness. Woohoo! We have already learned the microexpression for happiness in chapter 1.
I thought you were just adding that, and then I
I'm
saw
like, oh wait, it's in here.
oh my gosh.
Which proves that that is so me. When people say copy and paste this and the beginning of it is woohoo, I am like, there is nobody in the world that knows me that is going to believe I wrote that.
I know.
All right. For happiness, genuine happiness is marked by the lifting of the upper cheek muscles, officially called the orbiculus oculi and zygmo. It's a smile. You know you're seeing a real smile when you see these lovely crow's feet wrinkles around the eyes. The happiness microexpression is marked by corners of the lips equally pulled up, visible lips parting with teeth visible, engaged upper cheek muscles, wrinkling along the sides of the eyes. You often see a happiness microexpression in the following situations: when celebrating with someone, delivering good news in a pleasant or positive experience. You might see fake happiness as well. This often happens when someone is trying to cover up real feelings. They're feeling tired or overwhelmed, but trying to look positive. Photo alert. Accidentally in a profile picture when trying to look relaxed. Fear. When we're afraid, our body often goes into fight or flight response. Our facial expressions actually help us respond quickly and accurately to threats. As soon as we're afraid, our eyes widen and our eyebrows go up to our forehead. This way, we can take in as much of our environment as possible to look for potential escapes or more threats. When our mouth opens and we gasp for breath, taking in oxygen in case we have to yell for help or flee. The fear microexpression is marked by widened eyes, lifting of the upper eyelids, elevated eyebrows with horizontal lines in the center of the forehead, and a slightly open mouth. That woman looked like she's in a state of panic. You often see a fear microexpression in the following situation. During a dangerous situation, when you give someone difficult information, in an unknown or confusing interaction, photo alert, in a picture when a flash blinds someone or they're nervous about being photographed. And surprise. Surprise is a great truth-telling emotion. For example, if you ask a colleague, did you know I was going to be taken off the project? Surprise will tell you instantly that they had no idea. If they show fear, it can be a clue of their previous knowledge. Surprise is easy to spot because it's the longest of the microexpressions. The mouth drops open, the eyebrows shoot up to the forehead. The surprise microexpression is marked by raised rounded eyebrows, widened eyes, dropped open jaw, intake of breath. You often see a surprise microexpression in the following situations: delivering unexpected news, sharing a story with a shocking ending, when someone is amazed or in awe. Photo alert, in a picture when someone is ambushed by a camera. Special tip, the easiest way to tell the difference between fear and surprise is the shape of the eyebrows. Fear is marked by flat eyebrows and horizontal lines across the forehead. In surprise, the eyebrows are rounded like upside down U's. I'm looking at those pictures. I don't know if I ever looked like that.
So I'm somebody like, if I'm reading something and they're talking about an expression and I'm like trying to think of what it is, like a verbal expression, sometimes I'll actually like verbalize it as I'm like reading silently. And so it doesn't happen very often, but it just happens. So I'm like watching this and I kind of looked up and saw the camera and I was like, don't do it. But I wanted to like, is this what it looks like? Like I wanted to try and see if I could make my face look angry. Like this lady. I didn't do it.
Some of that I'm not, like, I don't know. I don't get surprised very easy. Probably because I'm too cynical to get surprised. I'm just like, eh. But some of this I'm not so sure. And some of it seems like it kind of.
Well, there are people too that talk with a smirk. Like they talk kind of out of one side of their mouth, and that's just sort of their natural expression. So I don't know.
Right. I frequently have like, I guess it's a smirk. I thought it was a half smile on my face when somebody's talking to me, and I'm just like right then, I just saw it right there on you, Ellen. Yeah. And so it's like, but I mean,
showing contempt.
I actually used the word smirk last night to describe you last night on the thing, and it made me laugh because you were smirking, and it was amusing. I was laughing. Yes. I was like, yeah. That was funny. All right, disgust. Here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go.
We're gonna do this.
We are in my wheel horse now. When we experience something unpleasant, revolting, or repulsive, we show disgust. It is the face you make when you smell something bad. Imagine a kid eating spinach for the first time, or an adult for the 100th time. Ew, they say, and their nose crinkles up and a flash of their upper teeth. The disgust microexpression is marked by wrinkling of the upper nose, lifting of the upper lip, raising of the cheeks, tightening of the lower lid. You often see a disgust microexpression in the following situations: when someone smells or tastes something bad, if they don't like a person or an idea, if their phone keeps getting spam calls, during an unpleasant interaction, photo alert, in a picture if they're trying to force themselves to look happy but hate being photographed. Well, that explains a lot of my picture. Okay, sadness. This is the expression most accurately portrayed by emotion. A frowny face really does mean that someone is in a downy place. Sadness is the hardest microexpression to face. To fake. So when you see it, you know that you have hit a deep feeling. It is also the precursor expression to crying, so it can help you predict when someone is going to burst into tears. The sadness microexpression is marked by corners of the eyebrows pinched together, drooping of the eyelids, puffing or pouting of the lower lip, pulling the corners of the mouth down into a frown. You often see a sadness microexpression in the following situations: when someone is disappointed, right before they're about to cry, if they're overwhelmed or upset. Step number 2, responding. While microexpressions give you tremendous insight into someone's emotional state, spotting them is only the first step of decoder hack. Choosing a response comes next. Here are a few strategies. Anger. When I see anger, I think opportunity. Why? If you spot anger, you know you have the opportunity to explain, dispel, and get to the truth. Let's say, for example, you're pitching a project to a new client. The presentation is going swimmingly. They seem very engaged, are asking great questions, and nodding along with your points. Then you get to the price. Right as you mention the cost of the project, your client flashes anger at you. Across the boardroom table, you can easily see those two vertical lines appear between their eyebrows. Typical response? If you continue with your pitch, you leave questions unanswered. Yet the typical response is to just barrel through the rest of the material you plan to present and hope the anger evaporates. At the end of your talk, you'll be lucky if your client brought up his or her suspicions on pricing. Most wouldn't. Then you'd be stuck wondering why they say no. Using the decoder. Immediately pause and explain the reason you arrived at your price, so your client has the full context and understands your perspective. Then, before moving on to your next slide, ask if there are any remaining questions about the price. Once you've finished the pitch, circle back to the price and see if you still spot the anger. How to respond. Explore. Where is the anger coming from and how can you oust it? Stay calm, not offensive or defensive. Explain what information can you give them to feel less threatened. Contempt. When I see contempt, I think red flag. Contempt is a devious little emotion. When it isn't addressed, it festers and grows into deep disrespect and hatred. That's why you need to tackle it the moment you see it. Remember that spotting contempt doesn't mean that someone is a contemptuous person or that they think you are a contemptuous person. People can have disdain for an idea or a situation while still having a great relationship with you. This is why it's important to identify the trigger and talk it through so you can use it to strengthen your relationship and learn more about them. Let's say you're working with a colleague on a new project. You sit down over coffee to hammer out the details. You easily agree on a fair way to divvy up the project tasks and move on to the timeline. When you mention your 6-week goal, you spot a micro expression of contempt. Typical response, ignore it. You know it's a tight turnaround. And it's all hands on deck for this one. 6 weeks later, you're surprised that your colleague says he's at least 2 weeks behind. Now it's up to you to pick up the slack. A hacker's response, go into information seeking mode and figure out exactly what your colleague is worried about. What are his expectations for deliverables? How can you reevaluate to help him or you get this project done on time? Either decide on a new timeline or change the deliverables to be more equitable. How to respond. Find the source. What exactly is causing contempt? Reevaluate. How can you address the contemptuous issue? Build rapport. Where can you agree? Happiness. When I see happiness, I think celebration. Happiness is one of the most beautiful and joyous emotions. Savor it. Capitalize on it. Celebrate it. Don't let happiness go unnoticed. Let's say your partner had an amazing day at work. He bursts through the door right as you're cooking dinner. He whistles as he takes off his coat and saunters into the kitchen shouting, "Hey, honey, I have great news." Hugging you from behind, he asks if there's any champagne to celebrate. You turn around and see he is beaming with a huge smile. Typical response, you have pasta on boil, veggies sauteing, and wine already open. No, we can't chill champagne. I just opened this bottle of red, you say. Then, watch out, the pasta's hot. I have to keep stirring. Really? As you try to finish making dinner, you say to your partner, "Tell me the good news," as you set the table. Your partner's a little deflated. He still shares the news, but doesn't feel nearly as excited as he did when he came home. You have a normal dinner. A hacker's response. Tell me. Let me turn this heat down so you can tell me everything," you exclaim. He shares his major win at work while you put a cork in your wine and throw a bottle of champagne into the fridge. "We have to celebrate," you say. Dinner takes a little bit longer, but you get to clink glasses and ride the high of his work win. How to respond. Celebrate. Smile with them. Savor the moment. Capitalize. Ask for details. Jump into the joy with them. Express gratitude. Tell them you're so excited they wanted to share their happiness with you. Now, I have to say something here. First off, you throw a bottle of champagne into the refrigerator to chill because it was just sitting on the counter because everybody has a bottle of champagne sitting there. Okay. If this were to happen, well, if it were to happen to me, it would be a little odd. But if it were to happen, I would be like, let's turn off the pasta. Let's cork the wine. Let's go out to dinner. And you can tell me all about it. The kids can have pizza. We'll be good. All right. So the next one is fear. This lady looks like she has a headache. When I see fear, I think there must be more. It's your mother's birthday and you have a big family get together planned. That's frightening enough as it is. It's going to be a fun party. She's turning 60, so you and your siblings saved up to get her an iPad for her to watch her favorite shows while she cooks. Amy, that was contempt right there. That was sheer contempt.
I mean, I reread it and I'm better, but in the moment it was like they expect her to cook the dinner for her birthday the way it's worded. And so
I read that and thought, it's your mother's 60th birthday, so you all pitched in and got her a Roomba so she doesn't have to mop anymore. Nobody said, so you all pitched in and got her a cruise, or you all got her a weekend in the mountains. No. You got her an iPad so she can watch her favorite TV shows while she cooks. Thanks. After dinner, maybe they did expect her to cook. Your mom begins opening presents. She gets to yours and goes all teary-eyed while reading the card from you and your siblings. After ripping off the wrapping paper, she looks down at the brand new iPad and leather case, flashes a micro expression of fear before gushing about how generous her children are, and then rushes off to serve the cake. She has no idea how to work that iPad. Typical response. Nailed it. You and your siblings are very proud of your gift. Can't wait for your mom to use it. A few weeks later, she still hasn't taken it out of the box. A few months later, she's opened it and put it in the case, but refuses to do more than play Scrabble on the free app you downloaded for her. Why did you get her this nice gift if she isn't going to use it? I'm telling you right now, at Christmas, the third grandchild's getting that bad boy. A hacker's response. After cake, you take your mom aside and ask her if she's excited about the iPad. Of course, she says, but you spot that fear again. You offer to come over in the next few days and give her a tutorial on the iPad. She sighs with relief. After a few sessions, she's figured out Netflix and her email. You also sign her up for a free iPad class offered at the Apple Store. She comes back with a list of cool new apps she thinks you would like. Nailed it. How to respond? Address. What's the threat? It's the source of discomfort. Soothe. How can you make it safer? Comfort. How can you reassure, reevaluate, or remove the threat? I would also like to say that I take exception to the fact that because this woman's 60, she would be this stupid on an iPad, but I'm just saying.
Before you lived in an I house,
I would still know how to use a computer or something. I mean, you know, just because you turned 60 doesn't mean the only thing you know how to do is get the 3 channels on the TV you had when you were 6. I mean, all right, surprise. When I see surprise, I hope we are on the same page. Sometimes you mean to evoke surprise using a conversation sparker or delivering good news. Other times, their surprise surprises you. You're having lunch with an old friend. It's been forever since you've been able to catch up, so you spend the first 20 minutes just updating each other on what's been going on in your lives. The appetizers finally come and you begin to reminisce about college. Can you believe you asked that Robbie just got engaged? Your friend flashes a look of surprise. Typical response? You assume she knows, doesn't everyone? Sure, Robbie didn't post about it on Facebook. He doesn't use Facebook because of his job. But you figure it's common knowledge. You breeze past the topic. A few days later, you hear through the grapevine that you spilled the beans. Robbie was waiting to tell his parents before sending out announcements to everyone. Your leak got back to them before he could share the news. Oops, you're definitely not invited to the wedding. A hacker's response? You spot the surprise and clarify. Didn't you know? Your friend shakes her head and says, I had no idea. Thinking quickly, you say, hey, I'm sure he'll want to tell everyone himself. If you can keep it under wraps until he announces, that'd be great. Crisis averted. Wedding open bar is in your future. How to respond. Clarify. Do they know what you know? Qualify. What needs to happen next? Equate. How can you get on the same page? And disgust. When I see disgust, I think we better get to the bottom of this. People often flash disgust when they're trying to think of a polite way to say they don't like something. When we are worried about offending people, we keep our true feelings of disgust under wraps. However, if you want to get to the truth, you have to give people permission to express their true feelings. Let's say you're hiring a new employee. Everything in the interview is going great. He has a solid resume and a positive attitude. As you explain the different parts of the job, you notice that your interviewee flashes disgust when bringing up that the job is paperwork heavy. There's a lot of filing, alphabetizing, and photocopying that happens at the end of each week. Typical response, hope for the best. Everything looks good and you really think he's a great candidate for the position. You're shocked when at the end of his first month, none of your client invoices have been sent out. Why? There was a bottleneck in the filing system. He had been pushing off his weekly paperwork tasks and now all of your payments are late. A hacker's response? Noticing the disgust, you ask the candidate if he did much paperwork in the past. Oh no, he says, I'm great with strategy and ideas, but not great at organization. He tells you in his last job he had an office assistant help with those tasks. After the interview, you go back to your boss to approve a budget to hire him a secretary. He's worth it, and you want to focus on his strengths and delegate his weaknesses. Once he joins the staff, the entire office increases efficiency and you're able to double production. How to respond. Permission. Let them tell you how they really feel. Openness, everyone's entitled to his or her opinion. Solve, how can you fix the dislike? Sadness. When I see sadness, I think empathy. Let's say you're working with a contractor to redesign a bathroom in your house. The contractor comes highly recommended from your neighbors and you love his work. You've talked on the phone, but today the contractor is going to evaluate the scope of the project and give you a bid. When he comes up to the front door, you shake hands and say, nice to meet you, how are you? He says, I'm all right, but you notice a micro expression of sadness. Typical response, you have work to do. You're hoping and praying the project is within your budget. You offer the contractor some water and then tour the bathroom. After a few minutes, the contractor says he has all he needs. You're shocked. He spent no more than 10 minutes in the space and barely measured anything. As he's gathering his stuff, you ask for an estimated price. He gives you a number double what you expected. There's no way you can do it. Looks like you'll be stuck with the old bathroom or have to start from scratch finding a new contractor. A hacker's response? You spot the sadness, so you say, yeah, everything okay? The contractor sighs and says, long day, you know those. You get him a glass of water and say, those are tough, anything wrong? He tells you he just found out his father's in the hospital. He can't run over and check on him until after your appointment. You immediately tell him you can reschedule. He should definitely be with his father. The next day he calls to say everything's fine. It was just a false alarm, but he's so grateful for your understanding. He comes back that afternoon in a great mood and gives you an excellent price on the project. How to respond. Understanding. What's causing the sadness? Empathy. How can you help? Space. How much time do they need to recover? Step three. Understanding outliers. While the 7 micro expressions are universal, there are a few special exceptions I want you to keep in mind before diving into the world of facial responsiveness. An isolated eyebrow raise might look like partial surprise, but it's actually an indication of interest. We raise our eyebrows as if to say, oh really? Or fascinating. Offering affirmation like this is an excellent addition to the triple threat. You can also use the eyebrow raise to highlight something important you're saying. For example, teachers often raise their eyebrows when they get to a particularly important part of their lesson. This is a subconscious way we call attention to our words, and frequently the most engaged student listeners will raise their eyebrows right back to show that they find it interesting too. Eyebrow raises show engagement, attention, and curiosity. Facial punctuators. Just as we use our hands to emphasize our words, we use rapid facial movements to accent or punctuate what's being said. For example, we might bite our lips to show nervousness or puff out our cheeks to show frustration. This is a way we add dimension to our expressiveness to our verbal communication. Facial punctuators are a normal part of interaction. Occasionally, people will use one of the 7 micro expressions as their facial punctuator. For example, Simon Cowell, the infamous American Idol judge who rips contestants to shreds, uses contempt as his facial punctuator. No wonder he's stereotyped as the critical one. Yet for him, contempt is a means of accenting his statements. It isn't necessarily a sign of inner derision. If you notice someone using one of the 7 microexpressions frequently along with their words, it might just be their facial punctuator. Facial punctuators, highlight ideas, accent words, can be one of the 7 microexpressions. Squelching. Squelching is the result of trying to hide a microexpression, which creates a mishmash of facial gestures. Have you ever tried to suppress a yawn? Your body has a really hard time stopping itself, so you make a crazy expression, squishing your eyes closed, cranking your mouth shut, and tensing your cheek muscles. It's a very similar feeling and look when someone tries to hide or contain a microexpression. It can be an indication of embarrassment or concealed lie. If you notice someone make a squelched expression, be sure to dig deeper to find the source of the disguise. Squelching can be seen if someone is lying, embarrassed of their reaction, hiding their true feelings. These days, we very rarely have the luxury of making a first impression in person. An interviewer Googles you before your interview, a potential client adds you on LinkedIn after getting your email, or you meet someone on Tinder before going out on a real date. The question is, what does your digital microexpression say? When making a first impression, you get the luxury of a few seconds in real life. Online, it's not so cushy. Princeton University researcher Dr. Alexander Todorov found that you make a snap judgment about someone online within 100 milliseconds of seeing their picture. The good news is you're in control of the messages you send in your photo. Whether you have an email avatar, a social media profile picture, or a business headshot, you can use the 7 micro expressions to send the right signal. In another experiment, Dr. T found that different images of the same person can create drastically different first impressions. Participants change their minds about a person's intelligence, trustworthiness, and attractiveness depending on what picture they were looking at. We did a mini experiment in our lab that we called Hot or Not, indeed using the website hotornot.com. If you're unfamiliar visitors to the website, rate pictures of strangers. We coded 400 photos of men and women and found that the hottest photos had different patterns than the photos with the lowest scores. Specifically, in regard to microexpressions, photos with fake smiles or closed mouth smiles got lower ratings. Be sure your profile pictures aren't accidentally showing negative microexpressions. Common mistakes are showing contempt in an attempt to look casual, flashing fake happiness in lieu of a real smile, squinting in the sun, which looks like an anger microexpression, blinking or reacting to a flash, causing an accidental look of fear. Check your online photo to make sure you're projecting a strong digital first impression. The Microexpression Challenge. A book can teach you only so much about microexpressions. The best way to exercise your decoder muscle is with a video. You can slow it down, pause it, and speed it up. We have created watch guides for some of our favorite TV shows so you can practice spotting, decoding, and exercising your facial reading muscles. The watch guides are like Where's Waldo for facial expressions. All you have to do is follow along with each episode and see if you can spot all the clues. It's super addictive. It's also the best way to see facial expressions in the wild. We have all these free for you in your digital bonuses at www.scienceofpeople.com/toolbox. Just download the watch guide and see if you can spot all of the expressions. I also frequently tweet about microexpressions I see during debates, newscasts, and recent events. So be sure to follow me at Van Edwards on social media. Follow your instinct. One final reminder, follow your instincts. Just as we are wired to show microexpressions, we are also wired to read them. This hack teaches you the names for what you already know. If you ever forget what a facial expression means or can't recognize an expression, try to mimic it. When you copy a facial expression, you'll often feel the emotion it portrays. This is because of something called the facial feedback hypothesis. The hypothesis is that our facial expressions and our emotions are connected in a loop. When you feel an emotion, it's expressed on your face. On the other hand, when you have an expression on your face, you also feel that emotion. This is a great ninja tip. If you want to really feel as someone else feels, copy their expressions to glimpse their inner state. So the challenges. Use the tear out flashcards in the micro expression appendix in the back of this book to practice facial reading on the go. Take our Science of People micro expression quiz to test your facial reading skills. Watch shows like Lie to Me, Survivor, and The Bachelorette to practice spotting facial expressions. We have a full list of shows and watch guides in our digital bonus at the website. There are 7 universal facial microexpressions that humans display. Once you know how to read them, you can spot hidden emotions behind words. The decoder is the ultimate hack for speeding up connection by getting of the truth and understanding emotional needs. Always look for the 7 micro expressions as you listen. Don't confuse eyebrow raises or facial punctuators for universal emotions. And if you don't recognize an expression, mimic it and see how it makes you feel.
See, I mimic things like that. I'm on the right
Doing
track.
what you're doing, you didn't even know it. Look at you.
It's so funny. Amy and I immediately, I saw her doing it too. We're like, there are flashcards in the back of this?
I
We're
know.
both
I'm like, what?
like, look at that. That's funny. Interesting. Those are all interesting. And yeah, I like I said, I'm not sure I 100% agree with some of that. And then it's like, but then when, you know, her making the comment about like in your profile pic, you know, having a half smile, trying to be casual. And I was like, yeah, I could see somebody doing that and thinking that that's the vibe they're putting out there. But I never thought it looked like you
You
had.
two probably haven't done this, but having been on a couple of dating sites in the last couple years, some of those pictures are some of the most ridiculous things you've ever seen in your life. And there's like a big difference between people that are, you can tell, are trying to look good, and that's not the way they look. And people that just flat out don't care about how they look on that. I mean, especially the guys, you'll get guys that are like in a t-shirt, in a recliner with their beer gut hanging out, just like, and the remote in their hand. And they're like, this is who I am, take it or leave it.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Next.
I didn't want to leave in that, but yeah. So, but it doesn't even matter because like you see the pictures and only twice, but both times that I saw the actual people, very little to do with the actual picture. So, yeah. Which made me believe that I should just like maybe put up pictures of other people on mine and let them take their chances.
That is interesting. I bet that's a really good place to like, that's a perfect example of what your picture says about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or what you wanted to say about you. Because people
Right.
put up pictures that, yeah, that don't look like them at all. Or
Mhm.
15 years ago. Or, yeah.